As I said earlier in the show, we have a special guest with us that's been with us before. Author and historian Michelle Duster is with us this morning. Good morning, Michelle. Welcome to Choose Views. How are you?
I'm good, Richard. How are you doing?
I'm good. I got a big smile on my face because I'm talking to you this morning, and I'm so excited to have you on and talk about your two articles that you've most recently written and published. And I just think that these are so apropos right now with what's happening in our conversation post-election. You guys may not know this, but Michelle writes for Rebellious Magazine, and as well as all the other stuff that she's doing as an author and as a historian. But most recently, Michelle has posted two really great articles that I'd love for her to talk about. The first one, the presidential election proved Black people, especially women, need to take care of themselves. Michelle, take a moment and talk a little bit about that article.
Right. Well, I'm involved with different groups, and I read a lot. And basically, my take from all of the feedback or the things that I've noticed is that Black people in general, but Black women specifically, feel very betrayed by the greater population in this country for voting the way that the vote turned out, because we have been on the forefront of working for equity, inclusion, compassion, empathy, all of the things that are about sort of a multiracial, multi-religious, multi-gender, America. And so for certain blocks of people to vote in a different way, just makes us feel like we are by ourselves. We are in the minority when it comes to our vision of what this country can be.
What has been some of the reception of the article? Have you had any feedback from folks regarding what you wrote?
Oh, yeah. I've had a lot of Black women tell me, absolutely, this is how we feel. And specifically when it comes to Black women, there's a feeling of abandonment by white women. Because this is the third election in a row where white women have voted very differently than Black women. The majority of white women have voted differently than the majority of Black women. And so we have this history now of white women expecting Black women to participate in causes that are women-centric. But then when we, ask them to support something that is about us, our concerns, then they don't show up for the third election in a row. And so it's really the biggest disappointment that most Black women feel is this sort of fractured alliance with white women. And so the response I've received from some white women is tears, or like defensiveness of like, well, I was helping too, and I rolled up my sleeves, and they go on and on and on about what they've done as an individual. But the Black women that I've heard from are like, absolutely, we are done. We are not trying to have this coalition, or we're not trying to beg people to see our point of view. We have to take care of ourselves, because nobody is taking care of us except for us.
Yeah. One of the things that, and to go to the numbers, and Michelle, just FYI, there's a little bit of static, or kind of an echo from your side of the call. So I don't know if that's, if you're on a speaker or whatever, but just to kind of let you know that. So going back to the elections, 53, 57, and 52. Those are not measurements, but they are measurements. Those are the percentages of white female voters that voted for Donald Trump in 16, 20, and 24. And that's greater than 50% in each of those elections. And yes, I know that there are a large number of white women voters who did not vote for Donald Trump in either of those three elections. But I think one of the concerns that certainly things that I presented to people is this. yes, you may have voted for the Democratic candidate that had policies and positions that will better your lives, but what work did you do in the moment to get your other white female colleagues, friends, family, business associates to see things differently? What did you actually do, or did you just vote? Were you truly active? Were you out there yelling and screaming? And that to me is where the miss took place in a lot of ways, is that white female progressive liberal Democratic voters may have voted for Hillary or for Joe or for Kamala, but did they do the work along the way? And are they still doing the work? Are they still rolling up their sleeves and not looking for a shoulder to cry on, but trying to figure out how they can still be active and engaged to get the work done?
Right, exactly. And, some of the comments that people have made to me is like, oh, well, I tried to talk to my grandmother, but, she just votes R for the past, 5 decades, and there's nothing I can do to help her see this point of view. Oh, I talked to my father, and he's just a staunch. And so they're like, okay, so what I'm hearing from them is like they do know people in their family or friend circle who are absolute Trump supporters or, Republican, no matter who the candidate is at all. It doesn't matter. If they have an R by their name, they're voting. And so there's this sense or this message that I'm getting is like, there's nothing I can do to, persuade people in my circle of influence. And so our response as Black women is like, well, wait a minute. If you can't impact these people that you know personally, how do you think we can impact them? We don't even know your family members. We don't have access to them. So why are we going to even bother to deal with this? How about we just say, you know what? Since you can't help, we're going to help ourselves.
Yeah, and that's why I read this piece earlier from John Pavlovich, who talked about this, and one of the sentences from it, he says, there is no messaging, because, there are a lot of white Democrats right now that want to blame the messaging and that Vice President Harris didn't walk the tightrope just perfectly enough to win over the white female and the white male vote. When in fact, what you just said about people who you've talked to that are so-called progressive whites will say, I can't get through to my father, my brother, my sister, my mother, my grands, my whomever. I can't get through. They're going to vote R no matter what. There's no messaging in my mind that's going to fix that. I mean, am I crazy, Michelle? Uh-oh, did we lose Michelle?
Exactly. So that's why I think a lot of Black women, and I mean, I'm not a pollster or anything. I'm just, doing anecdotal, from the people that I know and also what I'm reading and hearing. And that's why I think a lot of Black women in particular just feel like we throw our hands up in the air and we're like, okay, if you're not going to help us and, in your circle of influence and there's nothing you can do, and Kamala Harris represents a lot of Black women's experience of having to be twice or 3 or 4 times as good, run circles around the person that you're competing against, and that person is clearly, if you match resume to resume, that person, the Black woman is clearly more qualified, and has been this higher expectation put on her. Totally different measurements of what people expect from you. And the other person, you can be as low in this class and as unqualified as possible, but people still choose that person. And I think that's part of it, what people are so upset about as well, because we see it, we experience it in our everyday lives of, as Black women, having to be extremely overqualified and then have somebody who doesn't look like us, who doesn't have even remotely the resume that we have, and they're the ones who get chosen or they're the ones who get promoted. So there's multiple levels of like, we're done.
Yeah. Your second article, the one that just dropped this weekend, is equally powerful and a little bit of a kind of where we go and how we go forward. This is the title of the article is in anticipation of surviving the 47th president. Strategies and coalition building are underway. Talk a little bit about that article, Michelle.
Right. Well, I mean, there's been a little over a week of processing the how people are interpreting the results. A lot of people that I know are like, okay, this is our reality. We can't just be sad about it and mad about it. We have to do something. And so now people are switching from, an emotional response to, we can't just roll over and be victims. So what can we do? What agency do we have within our circle of influence to make sure that we are okay with what we anticipate to be a tsunami of hostility and unraveling of what generations, specifically of Black people, have fought for. And so hopefully we're wrong, but I think at the same time we're not going to wait and see if, just say the Civil Rights Act is overturned, or the Voting Rights Act is overturned, or there is more of an attempt to have a national ban on abortion, or getting rid of Medicaid, and just all of these things that, were promised. And so it's like, well, how can we protect ourselves, and how can we create our own networks and our own, policies and infrastructure so that if these things actually come to pass, we will still survive.
I think that a lot of people underestimate the frustration that is coming from Black women specifically, and women of color more generally, and the policies that are going to impact women. The number one policy or conversation around policy that will impact women is women's reproductive rights and care and medical care. If the ACA goes away, millions of women are going to be impacted by that. And if we see a change in, frankly, in civil rights, millions of women are going to be impacted by that. The irony is that that's not going to be something that just impacts women of color, Black women and other women of color. It's going to affect a swath of those 53, 57, and 52% of white women who voted for Donald Trump. And so that's the part where the frustration in some cases is we brought you to this point to tell you that we had to cross this river, but you decided to stay on the sidelines and not cross the river. Now the river's dried up and there's nothing there for you. And I think that's a part of the where we're going to be. But I applaud you, Michelle, in your article of saying, but here's how we have to rebound from this. We still have to coalesce, and we still have to fight and come together and lick the wounds that have been inflicted so that we will survive. And that's one thing about our community that we have done for decades, if not centuries. So your article is fantastic. What else you working on? What you got coming up next? I don't want to have to tip your hand too soon.
Wow. I think I'm still, in sort of self-care mode and just trying to make sure that I stay mentally and physically healthy, because I literally do feel like we are entering a war of survival. And so we can't, as they in the airlines say, you have to put your oxygen mask on first, right? Because you have to be able to be, you can't help somebody else if you're sick.
Right.
And I think that's where a lot of Black women are feeling as well. Like, we have to stop, pause, and make sure that we are okay and we are strong enough so that we can move forward. So that's number one. And then number two after that is, just sort of strategizing and figuring out, like, how can we, reposition certain things so that we can be okay financially. I really feel, I'm in the process of working with a group of people to figure out, strategies, not just reaction, but strategies of resources, of how we can build our own resources to combat, like book banning. We can build our own libraries, or we can build our own system so that books that matter to us and we feel are important are accessible. We can form coalitions and infrastructures to actually teach what is being taken out of the schools. And I'm not buying it by myself. I just feel like this is starting to happen.
Right.
And so what the state or the federal government might try to, extract and gloss over and, literally ban and censor, we have to be proactive so that we are not erased.
Right.
And, the information about us is not skewed and just made erased. And so we have to be proactive when it comes to that.
Absolutely. Well, listen, I know you're busy. I'm so glad to have you on, and we've got a couple of people that have some questions, which I'll read after we let you go. But thanks, Michelle, for being with us. 2 great articles. How can people find you? How can people follow you?
Pretty easy at Michelle Duster at pretty much everything, except, now there's so many new social media, not on everything, but I'm on still X, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook.
Yeah, Google her name, and you guys will be blown away by what you find. That's what I'll tell you. Google Michelle Duster, guys. Check out the work she's done. It will help you be better informed in this process. So thanks for being with us, Michelle. I'm glad we were able to get you on today. And I bid you a great Tuesday this morning.
Oh, thank you so much.
Good to hear your voice. Have a great day today.